So good morning, everybody. Looks like we're coming right up on the hour, so if everybody could please get a seat. Looks like most people have a seat. Sounds like I was in a shouting match last night, but I wasn't. I even went to bed early, but I apologize, a little bit of a raspy voice. Okay. All right, well, welcome to the Organic Produce Summit, and welcome to Best Practices for Organic Produce Handling and Display. My name's Gwendolyn Wired, and I serve as the Senior Director of Regulatory and Technical Affairs for the Organic Trade Association. And I have the honor of moderating this session this morning with three very, very fine panelists. I'm going to introduce the panelists, starting with your stage right, going stage left. First we have Mark Carroll with Gelson's Market, and then we have Neil Cohen with Sprouts Market, and then we have Jonathan Steffi with Four Seasons Produce, which I also say is sponsoring this event, so thank you very much. So where we're going today, I'm going to start off with just a quick regulatory framework. I find that if you're listening to anything about regulations, it's best to do it right when the coffee is hitting the bloodstream, so hopefully that's what's happening here, but I'm just going to provide a little bit of context for our speakers today, and then we're going to try to keep this as dynamic as possible, and we're going to go through a series of questions where I'll be asking the panelists the questions, and then we're going to wrap up by 8:40, and then we'll open up the last 10 minutes to audience questions. And if I could just ask everybody just a little reminder to check your phones and make sure that they're silenced so we don't have any phones going off, and if a phone does go off, my policy is that you owe me a beer this evening, so we'll keep track of that. Okay, so the take-home message on this first slide, I just want to make sure that everybody's here, on the same planet in terms of what and who has to be certified. The long and short is that if you're making an organic claim on the front panel of a product, or if you're putting the USDA seal on the front panel of a product, you must be certified. The product must be certified, and the company making the product must be certified. Any organic claim, whether it's an organic ingredient, whether it's a made-with claim, that product must be certified. The regulations do, however, provide some exemptions and exclusions, and that's really what we're interested in today with this particular presentation. So there are exemptions and there are exclusions, and I'm not going to get into all the detail on the slides. I wanted to put the detail on the slides that if you're interested in learning more, please contact me. I believe the presentations are going to be available. I want to make sure everybody that is interested in knowing the details of the regulations that you have that. But retail establishments fall under exemptions. They also fall under exclusions, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. As an exempt retailer, you're exempt from certification. Exempt retailers that do not process. Okay, so that's somebody that is simply taking product, they're receiving the apples, and they're putting the apples onto the shelf, but you're not processing those apples in any way, shape, or form. Or you're taking flour out of a bag and putting it into a bin. So you do not have to be certified. There's also exclusions. There's excluded retailers, and that exclusion is for retailers that process on site. So this would be your deli. This also could be backroom prep that you're doing for produce, because it really comes down to the definition of processing, which I'm not going to get into in detail. It gets rather complicated and ambiguous, but I do want to mention that I noted here on this bottom of the slide there that processing does include cutting, chilling, and packaging. So there's likely operations that you're performing in the back in terms of prepping your produce to go out onto the shelves that would then require you to fall under the exclusion of somebody that does process. So exemptions and exclusions. Now the important thing to remember is that while you're either exempt or excluded from certification, you're not exempt or excluded from following certain regulations. And this is the part that's often overlooked, and this is what's really important to really set up what our panelists are going to talk about today, is that for retailers that do not process, so if you're just putting the apples onto the shelf, you're still required to comply with the commingling and contamination provisions, and we're going to run through some examples and you'll become very familiar with what that means. But it's basically making sure that your organic products are not coming in contact with non-organic products, and that your organic products are not coming in contact with prohibited substances, so pest control materials or sanitizers that aren't allowed, for example. You're also not allowed to display the USDA seal or any certifier seal in a way that would represent the retail operation as a certified organic operation. So you have to be very careful with the claims that you're making in the store and the use of the USDA seal. Similarly, for retailers that fall under the exclusions, again, you're not required to be certified, but you are required to follow the regulations. And you have a few more regulations to follow if, in fact, you're processing. So if you're making a product, you're using all of your certified organic in-store produce, and you're taking them into the deli and you're going to make a salad, you do need to comply with the commingling and contamination prevention requirements. You also have to comply with the labeling requirements. So when you make that salad, you cannot call it a certified organic salad. You couldn't put that USDA seal on that certified organic salad. You could refer to it as organic, but not certified organic. You're also required to comply with the record-keeping requirements, which essentially, in the nutshell, is that you have to have records that demonstrate that that product is in fact organic. So receiving records, production records, invoices, organic certificates, and you need to maintain those records for no less than 3 years. So those are all required, whether you're certified or not. Those are the requirements. This is just a quick example. Here you've got organic coconuts next to conventional young Thai coconuts. You can see they've got dividers, and the conventional coconuts are wrapped in plastic. This is an example of commingling prevention, keeping your organic separate from the non-organic. This is an example that you would see in the back room in terms of keeping conventional produce on the bottom. They're indicating with the red flagging that conventional produce needs to go on the bottom so that the conventional produce isn't on top, potentially dripping. This becomes especially important with wet produce, making sure, just thinking through, really putting your reasonable thinking cap on how could organic product be, how could it lose its organic integrity? In what way could it come in contact with non-organic or prohibited substances so it would lose its organic status? This is an example of very good signage that would be in the back room. Again, this is an area that's often overlooked. The back produce rooms are prepping usually organic and non-organic, so there needs to be signs for all the employees so they're clear on the various steps that need to be taken to keep adequate separation and segregation between your organic and non-organic, making sure that surfaces are clean, that knives are clean, that you're not using the same cutting board to prep organic produce as you are non-organic produce. This is a labeling example. This is a certified retailer in Ashland. Because this co-op is certified organic, they are able to use the USDA seal as well as their certifier seal with Liberty, and they get to very prominently display that they are certified organic, and they also get to use the USDA seal throughout their store in a way that a non-certified store would not be able to. This is an example of certified organic Yukon Gold potatoes. These potatoes were taken out of the bags that they arrived in, and they were put right into the bin. So they were able to transfer the information that comes on that bag right onto the shelf. So they have their USDA organic seal, and they're representing these potatoes as organic. This is another example where you see the USDA seal for all of the produce that have been placed out onto the shelf. There's one green circle there that just says organic produce. It's not using the USDA organic seal. And the reason that USDA organic seal is not being used in that particular instance there, that is a very small grower, very small local grower that is exempt from certification because their sales are less than 5,000. And so in that particular situation, that grower had to provide documents to the retailer to say, you know, I am not certified organic, but I am exempt, and here are these records. And so they can still advertise it as organic, but not as USDA organic. Okay, so that was just a quick run-through of just setting the stage for the requirements that you do actually have to require or follow the organic regulations. If you'd like to learn more, I just wanted to provide some resources for you. My phone number, my email, ota.com. You can actually go to a landing page that we have that has documents, fact sheets, as well as this presentation will be there, as well as comments that we have submitted to the National Organic Standards Board on the issue of providing additional guidance to retailers on best practices in displaying organic. So I'm going to wrap up there, and we're going to move on with some quick introductions. We're just going to go down the line, and Mark, why don't we start with you? And I think you've got your microphone there, and just let me know if I need to switch any slides. I think we're all set, though.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for coming to this session. Just a quick introduction for myself. My name is Mark Carroll. I'm the Senior Director of Produce for Gelson's Markets, if you're not familiar with us. We're in Southern California, 25 stores, Los Angeles County, San Diego County, and Orange County, and Santa Barbara County. And we try to appeal to that customer that is looking for good quality. We think we have the best quality, or at least we strive to, and good service and freshness. So that's important to us more than anything else. Organic is sort of part of it, but that's not our focal point. But freshness and quality is our number one thing. Prior to that, I worked for most of my career in Texas with Randall's, well, actually with Tom Thumb, Simon David as produce managers. We merged with Randall's, kind of moved up there for many years with them, and then Safeway purchased them, and then I became MDO with Randall's, Tom Thumb. And then on over to Whole Foods for 4 years as a regional coordinator for 2 regions, the Southwest region, and then eventually the Rocky Mountain region, and then eventually into their global office where I was the associate coordinator for produce purchasing. And then I moved on down to Gelson's, and very happy down there. It's a great company. And I just want to thank the Organic Produce Summit for inviting us to this to give us our thoughts. I know we have a diverse group. I talked with many of you last night, so we'll try to tailor this the best that we can. So just quickly, you can see here, this is just kind of who we are. So we have kind of fancy real estate stores. You know, this is our Santa Barbara store, and so is that. We do a lot of outdoor merchandising. For grand openings, we get involved in this kind of stuff, you know, with watermelon carvings. And then our displays, well, we do some outdoor events. This is a Hatch chili roast, and everybody's participating, even me. And then we're really into quality and then new, unique items. So we came on board with the Sumo tangerines with that company. We were one of the first with them, so we do a big amount with them. So we just do different displays. So I just threw that example up there of a little Sumo guy in there. But that kind of shows you who we are, and yeah, and I'll pass it on down the line. So.
All right, well, good morning, everybody, and again, thank you all for coming. The idea and participation, we really wanted to have an opportunity to tell a little bit about what we do at Sprouts. We do have a tremendous focus on organics, which is ever growing, and this is really dictated by customer demand. We do offer really a value statement is our principal call out in produce. We do also focus on a tremendous amount of assortment, carrying about 450 to 500 fresh produce items every day, at least a third of which are organic. We're ever trying to grow our assortment base. We do this through certain category analysis where we might choose to go instead of conventional with just organic lines and things like we've done in the greens category and the roots category, and just constant evaluation of our sales. We're very heavily ad driven, so at any given point in time we have about 50 items on promotion in our produce departments each week. Our ads are very aggressive. We look to move a tremendous amount of volume while maintaining a high quality statement. The direction of our company is for some significant growth, and currently we operate in 13 states. We've got 240 stores, give or take, but looking for ever growing our base for sourcing. One of the things that I'd certainly would like to accent while we're talking here today is the business is ever growing. You know, a lot of retailers in here, but to the end of the suppliers. Can't recommend enough. Anything that we can do to expand our supply source is just going to provide us more opportunities to promote. We really attract the crossover customer, folks that are looking to initiate a more healthy lifestyle. So to incorporate more organics kind of goes hand in hand with that. So with that said, thank you guys very much, and I'll pass it on. Jonathan?
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jonathan Steffi, and I work for Four Seasons Produce as the Director of Sales and Retail Services. And we're a full-service produce wholesaler that reaches independent retailers and natural food stores and food co-ops with their daily delivery type business from the greater Washington, D.C. area all the way up into the Hudson Valley of New York City area, and all the cities in between. And we do some warehouse business in areas beyond that. We have a full selection of organic and conventional because we're servicing both conventional retailers and stores committed fully to organic produce. And so we get to interact with those independents in some very unique ways to basically experiment with a lot of different ways to do things better related to selling organic produce. So looking forward to this. Good morning.
Great. Well, thanks, everybody. So let's go ahead and move into some questions. We've got some photos. Are you taking charge there with the...
All I know is I'm up first.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about what has been successful in your experience with merchandising organic produce.
Okay, so I'll go first on this. So, we've tried different things, and we'll talk about integration versus segregation a little bit later. But other than that, what we try to do is we try different things to where we make some single statements. So, like you see here, this is the, if I can get this right there is the organic avocado display. So we do single statement on a high velocity item like this. This way you're going to sell a lot more product if it's a high velocity item for you. Avocados, for us, if we were to add up all our dollar sales in avocados for the year and divide it by 52, it averages out to be our #1 dollar sales item at Gelson's. So that's a huge velocity item. So we've kind of tipped it over a little bit to a little bit more towards the organic side, and we always try to go to the premium sizes, of course, and we always try to keep ripe ones on hand. That will help the customer, and what I don't show there is that the conventional avocados are right nearby. So the merchandising success here is to make sure that they're right near each other, so the customer, if they want to trade up, I guess, to the organic, they can do so. Some of the other things here, where we bought Gelson's bought 7 of the Hagen stores when they shut down. And this is what Hagen's was doing beforehand. And I thought it was very clever, so I thought I'd throw it in before we tore it up. And what they did is they just put organic right up front, just to let everyone know they're in the business. They didn't necessarily segregate, but they put it right up front. And it's similar to what we had done here, only I think they probably did a little bit better job than we did. But we kind of toned it down compared to them, but nevertheless it does work well for us. Along with the single statement stuff here too, we also, because of our proximity there in San Diego, we did sort of a meet the grower. So it's also a local item, so you can kind of, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak. So that's pretty much our success, and we have tons of other successes, but this is the one that I think that will generate the most dollars. You'll get the most movement. And then if you do something, and we did this with the California Avocado Commission, if you're a retailer, it's something to think about, and that is have a contest for selling. And this encourages everybody to go ahead and build large displays of whatever, in this case organic avocados. And then as a result, you're going to start seeing a lot more movement, especially the requirement is to have a lot out there. And then you're going to start moving tonnage. It makes it easier to buy. You can start filling up trucks and everything else, and you can get better prices as well. So those are some of the successes, or one of the initial successes that we did with organics.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. So brought a slide really just to try to kind of represent what it is that we seek to do in organics. We do create destinations. It is still, and we see it through our customer relations inquiries, as well as in-store, still customers getting familiar with what's organic. They question the integrity, and as well as how we go to bat doing it. What we have found is by taking a segregation approach to the end of any customers with concerns about commingling, you can effectively eliminate that. As we develop our program more and can get things wired down so that it's not any concerns about commingling or what have you on the part of the customers as a whole. We could possibly entertain, but we'd really let the customer drive what it is that we're looking to do in terms of our merchandising. So a couple of things I would accent here is just the ability to create a destination display. You'll see in the front there's items that are from our bulk department, so we seek to do cross-merchandising. Some of the pictures I'll show later also indicate cross-merchandising from even general merchandise standpoint to encourage juicing, to encourage those things where people are making that transition to a healthier eating lifestyle. And then I'll touch base on it later as well, but signage especially, we make a point in all of the stores to have an organics count prominently displayed near our principal destination display for organics. And this way it speaks to the amount of organic assortment that we carry, and we're looking to ever grow that. So, Jonathan?
So I'm going to pull up some of your other pictures because I think they're pretty awesome.
Thanks.
So I think as we think about what are the things that really are driving organic merchandising, and what are some things that stores can do to just make it great, I think perception in the staff is an important thing to really tackle, because particularly if you're a traditionally conventional store and you're wanting to add organics, getting a culture of owning the zone and creating the same kind of excellence you'd put into any other area of the produce department into organics, that is a fundamental, like, permission to play type of scenario. And so once you've accomplished that and you're calling organics the same, on the same pace you'd call other areas of your produce department, and you're ordering as if you're going to be putting it out every day, just like other parts of the department, those are some very fundamental things that drive success. And then once you accomplish that, then some of these other exciting ways to promote and merchandise organic come into play. One of the questions that we kind of tackle often is, well, how do I handle organics if I can't get product through the register correctly? And so we can just touch on that now. We may come back to it a little bit later. But this is a question that's very common to us, and packaging is not something that's preferred by a core organic consumer. They want less packaging, right? But getting that apple that is $2.99 versus the apple that's $1.99, it's the same variety, organic versus conventional, getting that rung up correctly, that's a gross profit issue for a store. And so there are opportunities for packaging to solve some of those problems. And Gwendolyn, maybe is that an area that we're going to come back and connect with a little bit more later, or should we delve into it now?
Let's touch on it when we're talking about integration versus segregation. I think that would be the appropriate place. Yeah. So on that same note then, in terms of, you have your successes in merchandising organic produce, could you talk a little bit about what missteps you may have made? Offer the audience some advice on where not to venture.
Yeah, well, for me, with Randall's Tom Thumb, it was a category. Organic was a category, and maybe with a lot of retailers, that's the way they treat it, as a category. When I went to Whole Foods, it's not a category. It's what they are. When I went to Gelson's, it was a category again, so I removed it from that. To me, that was a mistake, to do it as a category, because then you don't focus on the growth of organics as much as you would is if you, and this actually follows up with the integration piece. So if you integrate, and if you have a category of, let's just say, all apples, and then you include the organics in that category, then you're going to measure the success of all the apples. And then you're going to see where you have the opportunities to grow. You can segment and drill down into those categories and look at something that you might see an opportunity to grow. In my estimation, when you do categorize it, you tend to kind of box it up, so to speak, and then that person only focuses on a variety of organics rather than the apple guy focusing on the apples, including the organic apples, and the green leaf and lettuce guy, focusing on all those aspects too. So to me, it's always best when you, and we'll get into the integration piece, but when you also integrate the category and look at the performance there. because otherwise you're going to see some false metrics, or not necessarily false metrics, but misleading metrics if you're looking at only organics. If you're looking at it inside that category, I think you're going to see some growth there.
Neil, do you want to?
Yeah, for sure. I would take a look at, from a promotional standpoint, one of the things that I think as a whole retailers have a tendency to do is to try to shrink down displays with the perception that it's a high shrink category or not necessarily a category. But what we found is abundance really creates a better opportunity to grow the category as a whole. So we got away from having smaller displays. We created a upper deck throughout our wet rack, which of course is the area that's most sensitive in terms of the handling piece, and created a tremendous amount of linear square footage. So trying to work within the existing space that we have to create those opportunities, not only to carry more assortment, but then we've, off of the wet rack, taken certain displays where we do pod displays or satellite displays so that there's a greater sense of abundance. And matching that up with the value statement has created a very successful model for us. As far as some other missteps, and we've kind of touched base on it, but the core organics customer really doesn't like a lot of packaging or stickering, to the end of trying to help your customer understand, but also making sure your staff can speak to it, is if we don't get that proper sale captured at the front end, the organics would not be a viable alternative for us. So it's trying to help that customer understand that there is a certain necessity for packaging, but also trying to have as light of a footprint as possible and going to bat with that. So, Jonathan?
So the things that I'm going to say are essentially variations of the things we've already heard, because I think there are some themes forming around areas where you can fail. And one of the 5 of the things that we often talk about with independent retailers in particular, or stores that just haven't fully gotten behind organics yet, is that you're going to fail with poor signage or no signage. You have to be really on your game with telling the customer what you're offering them. And even back to the essentials of what Gwendolyn talked about in terms of labeling at the front. A common pitfall is the set it and forget it scenario. Like, okay, I get my, especially if their primary supplier isn't always bringing their organics. Well, I get my organics twice a week, so I just set that counter on those days, and then kind of it gets ignored until the next time. That's a major pitfall, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You are going to shrink more if you don't touch the section every day like you do your other product. And a lack of variety, or maybe making some assumptions about price that influence variety decisions, that's another pitfall we see. So what happens is retailers say, wow, you have to retail their organic Fujis for $2.99 right now? No one's going to buy that. I'm only going to put out Red Delicious. And now you haven't actually given even the crossover customer, let alone the core organic customer, the opportunity to buy the organic Fujis that they could have chosen to buy. So, hey, boy, organic Yukon Gold potatoes are too expensive right now, so we're not going to offer them. And they only offer the russets. And then they think, well, the organic potato category, even that really underperforms. So those are some missteps there. Kind of having a one-size-fits-all pricing strategy is another pitfall, and that kind of ties into some of the promotional things that we've been talking about. And finally, you gotta have staff that understands the basic rules of, number one, what organic is. That's not local. It's not some, it's you have to have a basic understanding of what organic produce is, and then some of the commingling display aspects. You got to have your team trained on that continuously, every person, because customers are gonna question them.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah. Great, thanks. So you've got the clicker moving through there. So we've touched on it a little bit, and I know in my background's in certification, and I did a lot of inspections, so it's hard for me. I walk into a store and I'm just immediately tuned into displays, and I'm always fascinated by the setup and whether or not a store will choose to integrate their organic and their non-organic, whether it be in the produce section or really throughout the store, but particularly in the produce section, because if they do decide to integrate, then it poses all these additional challenges on how they're going to comply with the commingling prevention strategies. But then I'm also just fascinated in how that is for myself and for other consumers, and their ability to be able to find organic if it's not integrated or if it's set over in that section. So curious on, just to talk a little bit more about what you have experienced and what you find, and to give some advice to, how many retailers do we have in the room? Okay, super, taking notes, so.
Okay, well, it's different for everybody based on the square footage, based on whatever your business model is. For us, we're not about organics necessarily, we're about, quality and freshness, and we think all produce is great, right? And we have a lot of customers, though, that really want that organic, and we see it as a growth opportunity. We saw it, and as I mentioned earlier, we changed it from a category to incorporating it into the categories for growth. That meant also integrating our displays. Now, segregation, that works. It's great, you have everything together. There's no chance of commingling. You can sign it well. It's a great destination. That's fantastic. If it works for you, go for it all the way. That's the easiest way. So if it's easy, everybody be doing it, right? And so we want to differentiate ourselves. We feel we're in a competitive market, and so we want to do something a little bit different. So the integration piece does have its challenges, but that's what we support. So what we'll do is we'll do kind of a hybrid. We'll do, because we sell a lot, like our leafy greens and salad vegetables, so to speak, we'll have to decide if we're going to single line or twin line. Single line means carry only one organic or only conventional, and twin line means carry both. And so if there's price differential, we may go ahead and twin line. But what we'll have is we'll have our regular section of leafy greens on our wet rack, and then next to it we'll have a separate section with a divider of those same things. And sometimes that'll be 8 feet of each. So you can tell how much organics we sell that way. But that has grown over time. So when we took on that attitude, that wasn't a category, we started seeing this growth, come on. And I'm sure there's other factors for the growth too. The fact that we're in high-end markets as well, and our customers tend to have probably a higher disposable income than most. But so the challenge was to separate it, and then also to sign it well. So we came up with this kind of signage here, which we think is kind of, portrays sort of the quality image. And then we spread out on some greens as well to give that image. We did a few bump outs, as you can see there, right here, a few bump outs to call it out as well. And then, of course, all the signs, we put it right on the product instead of up above, to call it out. And then, of course, it's a greener color, and I don't have the conventional one to show you that it's not the green color, but to distinguish it. And then, and this is what I was telling about organic sections. So it's almost like segregated, but we don't segregate all the organics in one section. This is a segregation of all the organic leafy greens all together. And so there's a good market. This is in our Santa Monica store. So it does very well in that market. And so as a result, we responded that way. And then things like, I don't know if I have that. No, that's your slide. But what we do also is, again, think about if the customer, if you have a separate section and you have the strawberries organic way over here, and then you have all the berries here, that customer coming in for berries may not buy the organic berries because they don't know it's there unless they're used to your format. So, and it's packaged, right? So you can put them next to each other, and then you probably sell a lot more organics. At least that's what we found. And we grew our particular berry category from about 8.5% of our sales to almost double that, just by putting all the berries together, including the organics. So we do both those things, but it's kind of like a hybrid of integration and segregation.
Okay, great. Mark,
Very good.
thank you.
You want that?
Yeah, that's perfect, thanks.
Good.
And actually, Mark just queued me up perfectly to the end of segregation. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we found it to be a very effective model for our business. As we grow as a company, just having an identical execution among 200 plus stores creates some just realities that if you want to make sure that the execution is there and you maintain that customer credibility in terms of what you're doing, we found segregation is an effective method. But with that said, the green signs that you see hanging from the upper deck, that leads into a conventional section. What I would accent, and unfortunately my picture could probably accent it a little better, where we go from those green signs to our yellow signs to indicate conventional. It's very important to have a non-permeable border, and typically folks use bagged carrots. Any kind of cello-wrapped items can typically offer that, but just make sure the bag itself is non-permeable would just be a piece of advice that I would share with the group. In terms of the variety, in terms of sections where items are sectioned together, keeping the greens together, keeping all the root assortment together. Mark makes a very good point as far as items like berries, where you do have an opportunity to keep them within close proximity. One of the things I think that I see with some frequency in our stores, when there is a separation between displays, you'll find a conventional package of strawberries sitting where somebody, oh, well, here's the organics, I'll pick this up. So it's certainly a good consideration in terms of how you can determine what you're going to do from a merchandising standpoint. But I'll reach back to a destination. One of the things that we really find effective for us is that customer that really wants to hone in, get in and out of the store, just go to the organic section, pick up what they want. We find from an ease of shopping standpoint that works for us. Not to say it's the only way to do it, but it certainly creates that separation, which is important from the commingling standpoint, but it also creates that ability for the quick in and out shop, and of course for the customer that wants to spend the time, we make a point to have a lot of incremental items, which are specialty season items, to create a little bit of a treasure hunt-like aspect to what it is that we offer, and we make sure that that pertains not only to conventional items, but organic ones as well.
Great.
So,
Jonathan, you've got a bunch of pictures you might need
okay,
to
yeah, sure.
fast forward to.
We'll just show some very practical pictures. So here was a retailer that they wanted to do package for every vegetable, no matter what. They wanted to package. But yet, whoops, wrong. Yet their fruit section, they wanted to do bulk. They wanted to do everything bulk because they felt that it's more reliable that they'll get a PLU sticker that stays on a piece of fruit versus a PLU sticker that stays on a pepper or a zucchini and so forth. So this retailer did a segregated sections. So they have a segregated fruit section, segregated veg section, and then they did two different things, bulk and packaged. Here's a retailer that is doing a bulk fresh organic section, organic wet veg, but they did it beside their conventional. So it's like not a fully segregated organic produce department like sometimes you see, but a segregated area by commodity group. Another combination of, someone wanting to offer the bulk fresh wet veg, but package on some of the others. That's its own kind of area of the store. Here's something that we're actually seeing less of, but it can be done, and that's keeping all your organic wet veg together and doing the organics on the top so that you don't have the commingling issue. Here would be a totally segregated section. So they make it its an organic produce department within the greater produce department. Here would be another example of instead of a whole separate department, an area of product groupings. But to Mark's point earlier, if you're going to integrate something, berries and tomatoes perform the very best when integrated. But again, it just takes a level of sophistication to keep up with it and sign it right and not commingle tomatoes and so forth.
Great. Okay. Well, I just saw the 10-minute sign go up in the back. Thank you very much. And I really want to make sure we have enough time to take questions from the audience. So why don't we just move right in and open up questions. I don't think there is a microphone, so if you could just speak up.
I can do that.
All right, great. And I can repeat the question.
Any one of the panelists, what is your number one obstacle at store level for a successful program for organics?
I'll jump in. I would just say consistency. I think that what you have to take into account, you're going to have your very high-performing stores, people with a high level of diligence in terms of execution. You have to take into consideration your lowest common denominator as well. And while certain folks might put in their very best foot forward each and every day, the ability to train everybody if they've got turnover, whatever the circumstance might be, it's critical to keep touching on each and every one of the fundamentals. And this starts back of the house. Most importantly, we haven't talked about during our meeting much, but making sure that the need for segregating the product in the back rooms, on the loads coming from the warehouse. We spent some time with due diligence just to make sure that our pick lines avoided any sort of commingling issues, making sure that we were in line with OTA and the National Organic Program guidelines, but all the way through shipping to our stores, to handling in the back rooms, and then of course on the floors. But it's making sure that it's scalable and making sure that the training is an ongoing effort, as Jonathan emphasized earlier.
Great, thanks. Other questions? Wow, okay, why don't we start right here?
I wanted to know, a couple of you mentioned consumer questions and them questioning the integrity of organic. Can you tell us what are the main questions that they're asking and how are you answering them?
Sometimes those questions are easy to answer by explaining just what we talked about here. Keeping certifications on file. There's rules guiding the distribution and handling of and growing of organic produce. But a lot of the questions then are completely difficult to understand. Is that, hey, I don't trust product from some country of origin, or hey, why can these packages be together? But some things are just a little bit more difficult to explain, and so admittedly, anything that's kind of outside of what you can explain through the rules of the NOP, that's the stuff where you got to do some homework first and then get back to the consumer.
Yeah, and if I might touch base too, I would just say the import piece is huge. Anything coming from Mexico, there's still a great deal of concern if indeed, whether it's Mexico or anywhere else, do they truly have to follow the same guidelines? I find myself on a regular basis trying to provide an answer, but then also a reference point, whether it's an OTA website or the USDA National Organic Program, as a part of a response to a specific question. But it's making sure that folks understand that the same rules apply to product that's imported, the same that it apply to product that's domestically, and there's the same need for diligence whether it's grown inside of the United States or from without.
Okay, great. All right, I think there's, right in there back in the middle.
What's your percentage shrink in organic versus?
Percentage shrink for organic versus conventional?
I'll try that one. So if you take the attitude that it's going to be a shrink category, you're never going to grow it, right? So we went ahead and allowed for some additional shrink in organics in order to give it a chance to grow. That enabled us to broaden our sets. And in doing so, then we actually sold a lot more. So in the retailers, everything is measured as a percent of sales. Everything we do, What's your labor percent? That's percent of sales. What's your shrink percent? It's percent of sales. What's your gross margin percent? Okay, so if you grow the sales, then you grow the base as well. So we'll find things that are the good velocity items, and we'll use those to grow the sales base of organics, and that way we increase that aspect of it, and then the percentage of shrink will of course go along with it, right? In theory, it'll go down. We don't treat it as a separate category, so I haven't measured it in about 7 years. But I measure overall shrink, and our overall shrink has stayed consistent most of that time with some seasonal fluctuations in there.
I have an anecdotal answer that is kind of revealing in some ways. As I talk to conventional retailers that carry both organic and conventional produce, and then I talk to natural food stores and food co-ops that carry exclusively organic produce, the range of shrink actually is not far off. It's not far off. And so good retailers have lower shrink. Bad retailers have higher shrink. And so the range is very similar.
All right, other questions? Yes, in the hat.
Actually, I think it was about a year ago, I emailed you asking, so just wondering if you have any updates on whether or not OTA's going to be releasing an updated work manual anytime soon?
Thank you for the question. I am eagerly awaiting National Organic Program to come out with guidance based on a recommendation from the National Organic Standards Board. We've been holding off on updating our good organic retail practices until that guidance comes out, because we would hate to put something out and then have to redo it. The answer is yes, soon. I'll give you the same answer the National Organic Program gives us, very soon. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks. Yes.
Can you talk about any pesticide residue testing that's being done by local or federal agencies and how it's impacted your operations as retailers?
Well, the one thing I suppose I can speak to in Arizona, at one point the State Department of Agriculture had shut down certain portions of their operations, so we got a fair amount of additional attention. None of this was related to pesticide capturing any of that. We really align ourselves carefully with our vendor partners to ensure that they are following the guidelines. As you can reference in some of the National Organic Program materials, there are regular visits on an annual basis at the minimum for folks that are following all the rules. It's more frequent than that if there's any irregularities that are found. But there's a great deal more of federal oversight than there ever has been, and it's ever growing. As far as pesticide residues and what have you, just sharing, we don't necessarily do anything in-house. We align ourselves carefully with our vendor partners ahead of even doing any business with a specific vendor partner. There's a number of documents that they sign off on that indicate that they're in alignment with our expectations, especially as it pertains to organics and following all the proper handling and growing practices.
Great. All right. Yes.
I've got a question about incorrect register rings. Do you have an estimate of what percentage of your organic product is not rung correctly at checkout, and what items most often are incorrectly rung?
Well, for us, we have kind of a dual problem with that. We have some people who don't check normally, but then they get called up. And so quite often they don't recognize what it is, or they don't look at the code because they're not as experienced at checking. Then we have some checkers that have been with us for like ever, and they memorize codes, and then that can be an issue as well. So we take a look at it right away. Like if there's, like we did a promotion on organic grapes, organic red seedless grapes, I think it was August and September a couple years ago. And then it ended, there were no more, and then I took a look in there, and sure enough, we sold like $20,000 worth of organic red seedless grapes, even though we didn't have any on hand.
Right.
You know, so that's an issue in itself. So that just told me right then and there, I guess that was about 4 years ago, that told me right then and there that we need to discontinue that in the system so they don't ring it up. So we do that. We also do, we take a look, we have a system in our, actually somebody did it in our IT department, to where it shows us everything that we have not carried in the last 6 weeks, you know, so we can just automatically discontinue it, so nobody inadvertently rings it up on the register, at least in theory, to help prevent. But for the most part, we haven't seen, you know, a lot of that, you know, except for that one instance.
And if I might, I know we're almost out of time, but just a couple of things to help thwart that to some extent. We do a system of cashier ID checks and testing. There's also complemented with walks. Each and every shift, our cashiers are tasked with getting back to the produce department looking for new items, but knowing that they are tasked with being accurate, knowing that they are tasked with being able to pass the tests that we provide for them, which every single week include about half of the items organic. It's making sure that level of chin on the shoulder for the cashiers, so that they know we do need to make sure this is very high level of importance for profitability and success of the company. A couple of things that can help that along.
Great, thanks. So unfortunately, I think we are out of time. I think we're getting the cane that takes us off the stage. Is there an event in this room? Do we need to?
The next session will be in this room.
All right, well, I want to thank our panelists. If there's more questions, maybe just outside, if you guys have
Absolutely.
some opportunity, that'd be great. But just a warm round of applause.
Thank
All
you,
right,
Gwendolyn.
thank you.
All right.
All right.
Thank you so
Packing up
much.
fast.
Yeah, here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is this yours or?
No, I think that just stays there for the next person. Yeah. Yeah.